Hey guys, this is another essentially filler episode, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that organizationally we're all very, very, very busy right now. That tends to happen for the end of the month, end of the quarter, for the type of work that we do as far as the organizations that we're associated with. That said, it was the end of February and the start of March, and so yeah, we've been pretty busy over the last couple of weeks. There's been a lot going on again in our professional lives, but essentially, I wanted to take this episode and actually do something with it instead of making it another just sort of we'll see you next week when we weren't going to see you next week. Yay. Anyway, I figured just by myself it would be easy to talk about something that was going on with me personally rather than the whole group, but in a way that is still relevant to the podcast. And that was essentially that I would just talk about the evolution of the hardware in regards to the podcast. That may be a very boring subject for many of you, so by all means tune out and next time that hopefully if we can all get together. We've been doing a lot of remote lately, and that's not necessarily a good thing. Essentially, it's we have a remote session where people still want the ability to join, but they just don't have the time to commute. Of note, Stephanie and I live out in the middle of nowhere, essentially, especially in regards to or in relation to everybody else. So I think the shortest commute to us is still about 20 minutes or so, but the longest is well over an hour. So there's that. Anyway, as far as the evolution of the hardware of the podcast, since we've been doing the video, we've still been filming from the same device, and that is a GoPro Hero 6 Black. I know it's probably, in fact, I know it's not probably, it just isn't the best recording device. That is just something that I had available to me. It was, I had already purchased it for a different purpose. It was a trip to Colorado. And so, and I realized, bang for the buck as far as what I've got versus something that I might have to invest into right up front, the GoPro would work. And so that's what I'm doing. And it does work. It works out really well for what we're using it for. Obviously, our grade of video is not great at all. But as it is right now, we don't have a set, we don't have a studio. We are literally just filming in a dining room area that's not very frequently used for dining. So anyway, the idea is that we're going to be purchasing a new property in probably around the mid 2020 area, and one of the development plans is to actually set aside a dedicated recording space for both audio and video, and a lot of the design implementation will take into consideration both the audio and video aspects in regards to acoustics as well as lighting. Getting into the lighting, in the earlier videos, we were only, 12 episodes in so far, but you'll note that in the early episodes, there are the dining room overhead lights, and those are just not great. They're daylight bulbs, because we converted the entire house to LED lighting when we bought this property, but they're daylight bulbs, and they're very bright, and they work for exactly what we wanted them for, to illuminate the home, but they tend to do a lot of washing in regards to the the direction and the casting and everything. It just doesn't make sense to diffuse that light into something usable because it's just not workable. So the idea would be to get dedicated lighting, soft boxes, and so on and so forth, so that we are able to directionalize the light as far as where we want it coming from, how we want it to highlight the color temperature, and so on and so forth. However, I want to say it was I don't know, it was a few weeks ago we invested into a just a light ring for like close-up shots like this one. I still haven't had a chance to sort out diffusion, color temperature, and the intensity of the light for in relation to the distance of the filming. So right now, this could look awful. I have no idea what this looks like. I attempted to preview it, but that only goes but so far given the limitations of the hardware and what's there. So anyway, light ring, it allows us to directionalize the light forward facing onto the cast when we're in the dining room without having the overhead light washing out from above. So it's better than nothing, but it's not the appropriate tool for what the intent was, but it will, the idea is that it'll work for now. Anyway, so that takes us away from the film characteristics. The idea, by the way, is that a new camera will be purchased at some point. The appropriate lighting will be purchased, probably not until the new place. The camera may come sooner than that. It might not really. We don't have any traction whatsoever for YouTube. All of our audience is actually coming from um, the audio component of the podcast, and I'm not even sure how that's being generated in the first place, but there's a decent sized handful of you. So therein we want to continue to produce content, but audio first, and video next, and lighting, and the space. In regards to the audio, though, going into this without knowing anything about what would be a good idea for the audio, I did a little bit of research on my own. I talked to some people and looked into what the appropriate setups would look like. And the general consensus is that, so let's actually start back. What I realized is that I was only able to, at one point we were using a laptop and a microphone, and I actually, I think very first episode, we started with a Blue Yeti, and I knew that I wanted one of those anyway, for if nothing else than my own personal rants and rambles that I do online. Those are just things that I've recorded in the past, and it's come in handy to have a decent microphone. I don't use it for any type of streaming or gaming or anything like that. I just use a SteelSeries Siberia V2 headset, and that did everything that I needed. But as far as wanting better audio, a handful of years ago, I bought the Blue Nessie microphone, and that was great for what I was using it for. Again, specifically for me, just rambling to myself on my what I thought was funny content. But there was the need. I figured we're going to need a wider soundstage as far as space. The soundstage was going to be wider, and so I needed something that allowed me to capture more of that. And I knew that the Yeti offered the ability to change the recording patterns, and would allow me to record in omnidirectional or stereo, and so that would serve the purpose. What I didn't take into account initially, I guess I realized, but I didn't feel like was going to be such a big deal, was that there is all the ambient noise that takes place. Even in a quiet space, there's just ambient noise. And it doesn't help too much that in our space in particular, we have 120 gallons worth of aquarium going on, 2 different aquariums, and 165 of those 55 gallons, and they have varying degrees of noise that they make. We tend to top them off before each episode, but there's that. There's just the empty space of the environment that we're recording in that adds reverb to the environment. And so and then also we realized that, or I guess I realized when I was going back and looking at the audio in post, that we obviously have individuals within our group that speak louder than others, and so that necessitated the need to be able to control the volume or the gain, I guess, for each individual speaker. And so therein, with some research, with talking to other people, the idea was to split away from one singular microphone and move on to multiple microphones. And we have 4 regular recurring individuals in our podcast, but it occurs to me that occasionally we have extras. So there's myself and Stephanie, and then Reed and Jess being the 4, and then Nano and Trina showed interest in recording, although again they have a significant commute, and so the amount of time that's necessary for them to get from point A to point B, it just really isn't worth it for them to come out and do a recording, for 90 minutes or however long it takes us to put it together, and then either stay or drive home, or it's a lot of effort just for less than 2 hours of their time in regards to what it's worth to us. So therein, we got 6 microphones, and we wanted the ability to be recording from at least 6 microphones, and so therein a mixer. I mean, you can't have 6 microphones plugged into USB ports and being read because of the limitations of the way that that's handled. So the idea was, hey, we need a sound mixer. So I looked into a lot of different options for that, and then there were a handful of suggestions that I got from a wide variety of individuals that are out there. Mackie was one that Nano promoted heavily because he used to run a radio program and at some point in his life. I spoke to several individuals that are, excuse me, in the music production, and they recommended a handful of different Yamaha products. And then there were other people that said, hey, based on what you're trying to do, the fact that you're not doing music production, the fact that you're looking at this from a economical standpoint, maybe look into Behringer. So I took a look at the Behringer products, and bang for the buck, they've got quite a bit to it. People have their reservations in regards to the quality of the hardware that you're getting, and a lot of the acoustic finer points that I personally don't have the ear for, especially with what we're doing. We're a handful of people, oftentimes inebriated, speaking into microphones to just convey conversation. It's just a bit of banter, and so I didn't see it needing to be this high quality sort of thing. But I did need it to serve a purpose, and I didn't want just garbage. And so to an untrained ear, we went with the Behringer products. It was excellent for the bang for the buck. And so I specifically went with the Behringer, I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this right, Xenix 1222 USB. That's something that I did know. I wanted it to be able to connect to a computer interface via USB and convey that audio into something that the software platform would be able to interpret. And it's something that I'm going to experiment with in regards to the software platform. As there's Audacity, which I've used for years and years for any number of things, just a bunch of things. I've been using that for well over a decade. Then we've got somebody or somewhere along my line of research, I came across Reaper. That's something that I'm going to take a look at sooner than later. I don't know that I've exhausted the capabilities of Audacity yet, so I guess I'd be looking at Reaper more for just kind of get an idea of what the alternatives are, what they look like. But so yeah, we went with the Behringer 1222 USB that allows us to have 6 microphones, and so 6 preamps. We're using dynamic microphones, also Behringer. We're using the XM1800S. We found that we could get a box of 3 of them for less than $40. I should probably post the links to a lot of this stuff. I don't know if it's going to be useful for anybody. And the likelihood of somebody stumbling across this and saying, oh, hey, look, this is great, I'm going to use this advice. Probably not. Now, we're not in any kind of way where someone's looking at us for the end-all be-all for information. But anyway, the Behringer 1222 USB, 6 Behringer 1800S dynamic microphones, and that does the job. We found a couple of different options in regards to microphone stands. It was actually pretty funny because the microphone stands arrived much later than the rest of the components that were ordered at the same time, and that was neat. Reed came through. He has a what is it? It's the something Forge. It's a laser cutter printer, and that allows him to be able to cut a handful of different, and laser etch a handful of different mediums. But he printed out us, or cut out, whatever the vernacular is for that, some microphone stands, and they did the job for day one. It was actually really good. It worked out really well. We were able to just send him the diameter of the microphones at where we wanted them to rest, and he printed them out, and they worked out really good. I still have them just in case. Because I think I only picked up 4 microphone stands. So, and then I had another boom arm for the Yeti. But anyway, so yeah, we used cutout MDF ones for the first time that we used those microphones, and a handful of Amazon's Choice XLR cables. And that was something that was neat to find, is that we went from USB to the mixer, which is still outputting to the computer via USB, but all the microphones being XLR microphones, both ends, and it works out really well. And then because the mixer that we got is capable of way more than just what we're utilizing it for. We're never even going to scratch the surface of the capabilities of that, I think. But I was able to also connect out for a handful of other auxiliary devices in the event that I want to be able to play music for integration into the recording that we're working on, or phone calls, whatever the case may be. So it's really neat that that's covered there as well. And we have the ability to monitor each line, which is great. We went with there's a lot of Behringer going on. We went with the Behringer, oh man, I don't remember what the model number is, 4000 something, and that is a 4-port quarter-inch headphone amplifier. So we're able to output from the mixer into the monitor line from the mixer out to the headphone amplifier, and then the headphone amplifier out, so that at least 4 individuals are able to listen to their line live, or everyone live for that matter. But we also have splitters, because I don't know, I didn't look too hard, but I didn't know if there was a headphone amplifier for 6 lines. But we have splitters, and so a couple of people can share, and we're all roughly the same in regards to our hearing, I think. So there wouldn't be an issue too much with 2 people splitting for 1 line of amplification, setting the volume where they need it. So anyway, that's where we're at. I think I'm going to probably pick up a few sets of headphones, probably somewhere in the $20-$30 range, just for monitoring. Ideally something with longer cables. If they terminate to a quarter-inch jack, that would be, or plug, that would be great. Right now I'm using 3.5 millimeter to quarter-inch adapters, and so yeah, that's where we're at right now. It's kind of just this hodgepodge mixed equipment, but half the spectrum, more than half the spectrum, is Behringer mixer, Behringer headphone amplifier, Behringer microphones, and yeah. So back to the microphone stands, I guess. Sorry for the ramble, but we're using just some gooseneck table microphone stands. I think in the new space we'll probably move to boom arms. I'm not sure exactly what that's going to look like. We do have one adjustable arm, but it was for the Yeti. It's not really in a place so much that somebody would use it right now, but we use it in one-off emergencies where we just need another stand. We save the MDF ones from Reed, I guess, as a real emergency. But anyway, so yeah, we moved to the mixer, we moved to the headphone amplifier for the ability to monitor. Everyone has their own microphone now. Actually, just the other day, I snagged a couple of different stands. I've got a mixer rack on wheels. One of the problems that we ran across a couple of weeks ago was, and this caused a really big issue. It was an issue last night also, or the night before last, where every day, because it's in a dining space, every day that we do the recording, we'd have to set up and then break down, and in breakdown, nothing's labeled, and so we would run into the problem where we'd have to set up and do sound check and then do recording tests and everything, and it was just exhausting is a good word for it, especially if there was just a random problem. And it took, I don't know, Friday night, 2 nights ago, it took us hours, like literally 2 hours to try to hunt down an issue. And it was just that the DAW, or the laptop that we were using, was I plugged it into a dock, and the dock for some reason caused a volume cut, but in a way that was not easy to track down. It took 2 hours to track down why it was happening, and still couldn't find a solution for it. So I guess we're nixing the dock. But anyway, we got a stand where we can essentially, ideally, set everything up and set it and forget it. Everything will be labeled. I will be using a mic number, that will be my mic number. Somebody else will be using their mic number, that will be their mic number. So we'll be able to set the levels, the gain, exactly where we figured out that it should be, and not have to change it again, ideally. And that should save us a ton on time. a ton on setup and making sure that everything is as we need it and expect it to be every time that I mean, with minimal hassle, ideally, I think. Um, we've documented some of our setups so that we know what the settings are. Um, that it'll require very little in the way of reconfiguration. Hopefully, here's hoping. We still have another, I don't want to call it a problem, but point of consideration is that, as mentioned, kicked the camera. We have the ability to do remote, and I built out a phone system on the backbone of a PBX provider. It's like a VoIP system called 3CX, and essentially we have a meeting room where we all get together, and the people that are there local, they use the local equipment. The people that are remote are using whatever it is that they're using to record, and it allows us to just record the session, and then we have a captured remote session. Hooray! But the thing that we ran into is in regards to trouble is that how do we handle video where some people are here and some people are there? And I still haven't 100% solved that. I have a theory on how I would like to try to do that, and that is that we could probably record through, and I don't know, some streaming platform. There's OBS. I imagine that what we can do is we can take the video input, have everyone use their video line through the 3CX platform, and then record as a single pane through OBS. Alternatively, we could display the output, and this is probably what the first test is going to be, is display the output on a TV or a monitor that is within frame of the on-site recording source, and simply record what shows on screen, and that way the audio and the video will synchronize up. The problem is I don't know how we would input the audio. The audio on local side would go into the video, but the audio on the remote side is only audible through the monitor, and so I would need a sound in capability for the camera, and because the camera is a GoPro, to the best of my knowledge, doesn't support that. So it kind of brings us all the way back to how do we handle that, and I think the solution might be to simply set up the camera, set up the lighting so that it's appropriate, and then run a video out from the camera, which this camera supports, into a video capture card to the computer record the OBS session. OBS will pick up the capture card as well as in a pane, and then the video session from all other connected parties through the 3CX pane platform. And so that should work, and I think that's probably going to be the easiest one to accomplish, but it's going to be a lot of work and a lot of cooperation from the other parties. We know Reed has a camera that's not great, but it works. I sent him home with the Blue Nessie, so it does exactly what it needs it to do for audio, again, conversation. And that works for when Reed's remote. I really, really encourage on-site recording because it's just a tremendous amount of nightmare less by just having to do it here on site. But Nano and Trina picked up a Blue Yeti, and so that is, once it's dialed in, is great for them, especially since they both don't use headphones. They use speakers, so setting it up so that it rejects the background noise and the ambient noise that happens around them, and only picks up their voices. That should be great. There's been a little bit of a headache in regards to getting them set up with some video. I have a camera that I've been trying to get to them for a month now, and that just hasn't worked out. So they'll have video capabilities sooner or later. That's kind of where we're at, is that audio is for the most part sorted out. Lighting is in this kind of limbo spot of where I don't want to invest into the appropriate lighting until the space is set up properly, or there's a proper place to do setup. And video is probably going to be in the same boat, is that I don't really want to get into video until things are hammered down in such a way that it makes sense. Audio, we're doing pretty well. I think what I'm really, really excited about, I guess, as far as the new property, is that we'll have a room dedicated to this. We set it up. We never have to move it. We never have to break it down because it's not in the way of anything. It's in its own dedicated space. So that's about a half an hour, 25 minutes of my rambling about that. Um, Due to some copyright-free music, we picked up an intro song. It is long, I know. It's about 20 seconds or so of me talking and 30 seconds of lead-in music, and that is to give time for changeover and finding a good spot to jump into it. So the thought now is that our intro is going to be some kind of article that we found that is just ridiculous, over the top, or maybe just interesting, that is something that read, then it jumps into intro, overlay music, and then transitions directly into the episode. What we're going to try to do next week, just as a spoiler alert, is the Supernatural. It will be our third attempt to do that. If it doesn't work out that way, then it'll just be a bring your own topic. They tend to do really well anyway. So that is about it. I hope everybody has a fantastic upcoming week, or whenever you're hearing this. Have just a wonderful day, and we will talk to you next time.